Hello, I'm John Shepherd, and in this video we're going to take a look at how my coaching philosophy has developed over the last 12 months as we're coming to the end of the year. In doing so, I hope that this will also help you as a coach or as an athlete look at how you've been training and what you can work on to improve upon in 2021. But before we get into all of that, I've got to say what a difficult year it's been, not just for track and field, for athletics, but for us all in our everyday lives. COVID has certainly taken a toll on society. Clarity, of course, is something that as a coach I need. I want to be able to see ahead of me, to be able to plan. But this year has been, as I've said, extremely difficult to do that. So one thing that I have learned is we need to be adaptable as coaches and athletes, and also that potentially some of the things that we thought we needed to do, such as heavyweight training, weight training in general, for example, are perhaps not as necessary as maybe was previously thought. Why am I saying that? Well, during the first lockdown back in the early spring in the UK, all the gyms were closed. Yet my athletes managed to maintain a level of fitness that enabled them to come out of that period and perform very well at the end of the season, or should I say in that very truncated month to 6 weeks that we had to compete. So we, like many athletes around the world, had to use alternative means to maintain our strength levels. And it just goes to show that with some lateral thinking, it is possible to do that. Regular channel members may pick up on the fact that weights are not on my priority list in the way that they are in terms of other coaches and the way they use them. However, that's not to say that I don't believe that they are beneficial. I do. It's just that we can develop the speed and power that's needed for the long and triple jump and sprints without them, or without such an emphasis on them as maybe previously thought. For example, heavy sled towing, or sled towing with a lightweight for that matter, can enhance speed and acceleration in a similar way to what heavy squats could do. So there are always alternatives. So that, as I say, is one of my pick-up philosophies from 2020, that you're able to use other training means to get similar training effects. I've also realised that test results, although beneficial and motivational, can be a red herring in certain instances. Some of my athletes recently in particular have been able to be tested for their speed, their reactivity, their basic strength and postural integrity, for example. Now, those results, when you pore over them, can actually be slightly disappointing, and that you might think that your athlete is underperforming when you look at, for example, a reactivity score from a drop jump, for example. Yet the athlete is one of the best in the country. So I'm saying that we need to be mindful of investing too much into some of the results that come through testing. We need to analyse those against the strengths and weaknesses and physiological requirements aspects of a particular athlete. A poor performance, for example, in a standing long jump does not mean that that athlete is poor, that they are of a lesser ability. Now, connected to that and test scores and applicability to a particular athlete, you need to use that data to construct a training program that is relevant to that athlete. It doesn't necessarily follow, as I've said, that a weaker score in a standing long jump means that they need to enhance their ability to do well at the standing long jump. I've always looked at the sharp end of performance and what's going to deliver long jumps and faster athletes, and that's working on maximum velocity, takeoff mechanics and mid-air technique in the main, and always staying true to that direction. If you work on developing the ability to improve a standing long jump, you're probably going to deviate from actually jumping far. Perhaps somewhat slightly paradoxically, given what I've just said, I have found that biomechanics data has been particularly useful in furthering my knowledge as a coach. In particular, being able to understand just how fast long jumpers are, for example, as they come into the board on the third, second and first steps away into the takeoff. I've been able to compare that with data that I've got for my athletes and realise that there's a big shortfall between what happens at about 6 metres out from the board in terms of the velocity at which they're attaining. Now, of course, the elite jumpers in the world, males and females, are potentially a lot quicker than some of the athletes that I coach. But more importantly, I've begun to understand about where the speed peak needs to be on the run-up and what happens in the last 3 steps. And also, this has been illuminating to some of the athletes who weren't so aware as to where they needed to have their optimum speed and how speed will be lost over the last 2 steps or so in order to prepare for the takeoff. That does not need to be a huge loss in speed, but if you don't get to 3 steps out from the board with an optimum velocity, then you're going to slow down significantly in those last 3 steps. You need to have your optimum velocity 6 meters or so out from the board. This is my interpretation of the data, because on the penultimate step you will lower, on the last step you will adjust and lower slightly as you transfer into the takeoff. So there will be a speed loss, and of course the friction, the braking on the board is going to result in lost speed. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the channel. Well, over the last 12 months, the channel's grown, I guess, from strength to strength in terms of numbers, and in the autumn period, it surpassed 20,000 subscribers. Now, when I first set the channel up, I never expected it to grow to that extent. I've said it before in videos, but I did it in a way to force me to look more closely at the videos that I was taking of my athletes in action and make sure that I really looked at what they were doing. And I guess out of that, I began to develop myself as a coach, and also by the subscribers and views that began to develop across the channel, that became beneficial for athletes and coaches alike around the world. And that's very humbling. I guess in response to the subscriber base growth in the channel, YouTube enabled channel memberships. So that's something that I've had online for a couple of months now. I won't say too much about that, as you can check out the relevant video and information on memberships. However, I will just say here that I'd like to thank everybody who has become a channel member, whether as a coach, athlete, or a channel supporter, because it's helped me maintain my motivation and enabled me to develop different types of content for the channel. And I hope to be able to deliver more of that. People have told me that a good thing about this channel is the fact that we're all going on a journey together, that whether you be an elite athlete or somebody just starting out, that the content is relevant. It enables you to progress your technique, your speed, your conditioning, and you can also follow the progress of my athletes. Speaking of the journey that a coach or an athlete and myself as a coach goes through, I will say that I've now got an athlete on Great Britain's world-class program. Karim is a para-athlete, a T20, and he is now able to train at a higher level due to the support that British Athletics are providing him with. So if I'm able to, I hope to be able to provide you with some information, some videos, some behind the scenes experiences, if you like, of his involvement on the world class program. And who knows, he could be in Tokyo next year, should the Olympics go ahead. As usual, thanks for watching and good luck with your training and competition in 2021. Hopefully it'll be a much better year for us all, and by the summer at least, things will be back to relative normality.